Welcome to Cultural Connections Lab. I'm your host, Dr. Kelly Forbes. We are here to talk with educational professionals around the world to impact and influence the education system as we focus on cultural connections and the education of multilingual, diverse students. We're excited to have you join us today, and we sincerely hope that you enjoy the show. Hey there, listeners. Are you ready to take your school district to new heights? Introducing EduSkills, the leading software as a service platform for Title III and multilingual support in education. Having been a director of English language development for a school district, I was honored and privileged to get to use EduSkills. EduSkills understands the importance of equitable education and empowering multilingual learners to thrive in today's classrooms. Their cutting-edge technology provides school districts across the nation with the tools they need to enhance language acquisition, foster inclusivity, and improve academic outcomes. With their seamless implementation and comprehensive support, I have witnessed EduSkills ensure a smooth transition for school districts, empowering their educators to provide targeted instruction and personalized support. So why wait? Unlock the potential of your school district today with EduSkills. Visit their website, eduskillsllc.com, or call them at 405-879-9898 to schedule a demo. EduSkills, transforming education one student at a time. Welcome to another podcast episode of Cultural Connections Lab with myself, your host, Dr. Kelly Forbes, and I am excited to be here with two friends from Dual Language Education of New Mexico. We have Michael Rodríguez as well as Azul Cortés. Michael Rodríguez is the Executive Director of Dual Language Education of New Mexico. For 6 years, he served as the organization's Director of Operations, heading up and expanding its program design and leadership development offerings while supporting schools, districts, and state agencies across the country to create quality, sustainable dual language programs. During his 15 years as a school administrator, he helped to establish and operate 3 different dual language programs in the Santa Fe and Albuquerque areas. In his current role, Michael leads an experienced team of dual language educator-trainers who provide professional development in support of quality instruction for language learners and effective dual language program design. Dual Language Education of New Mexico is also host to the country's largest dual language conference annually in New Mexico, which is La Cosecha. I've been there and absolutely love that conference. It is in my top 2. I have to say the EduSkills conference has to be in the top 2 as well, right?
That's right, of course.
Thank you. Shout out to the sponsors of the podcast. We also have with us another great guest, Azul Cortés, Huasteco Tepehuan, is the Director of Heritage Language at Dual Language Education of New Mexico. And with master's degrees in bilingual, secondary, and special education, Azul is passionate about language, community, and cultural identity. He is currently a doctorate student at the University of New Mexico's Language Literacy and Sociocultural Studies, with his research focusing on the maintenance and revitalization of the heritage language through cultural identity. Azul has worked as a clinical research educator at the University of New Mexico's College of Education, Elementary Education, in the area of teacher preparation and in numerous indigenous communities with linguistically and diverse youth through the Bureau of Indian Education and in Mexico. He continues to work with grassroots organizations, La Placita Institute in Albuquerque and Homeboy Industries in East Los Angeles, who dedicate services to educated youths and young adults. Current work highlights language maintenance and revitalization efforts through an indigenous lens that centers culture and language as the voice of the community and the land in which they reside. I am so excited to have you both here. I've seen you before. I've been able to speak with you, Michael, previously at other conferences, and then was fortunate enough to hear you both speak as our keynote speakers yesterday. Again, the sponsors of the podcast, EduSkills, at a conference that they have here in Oklahoma. And it was just really fantastic to have you all there. So thank you for being here. Again,
thank you for inviting
us to be on this podcast. It's going to be fantastic.
Thanks for the invite.
Reading your bios, though, gets me so excited. This is something I'm incredibly passionate about. And it's interesting because I come at this with a passion that is going to be very different from where you all come from this. And so it's exciting this is what I love about these cultural connections that we have, is that my background, I grew up not knowing any Spanish. My family is English only household. But I was fortunate to have a great educator, like I was telling you all before, in high school, Senora Atkins. And Senora Atkins, if you are listening, shout out to you. But it was, those educators in my life that allowed me the opportunity to be passionate and excited about language. And through that, I was able to learn more about culture. And then through all of that, I was able to make more connections with friends and then be able to really learn more about this whole world around us through travel, physically traveling to different countries, but also just traveling through the stories of other people. And I'm so fortunate that I've been able to become part of this field in education, specifically multilingual and multicultural education, where we can have these conversations. So thank you for being here.
Thank
Two
you.
experts in the field. So I'm excited just to hear from you all. I want to hear about your journey of who you are and then to where you got today.
All right. Well, I'll go to get it started.
Yeah.
So I'm a native of New Mexico. I grew up in a small town just outside of the capital, Santa Fe, in Pecos, New Mexico.
Yeah.
And growing up there, I was part of the majority, right? We had over 90% of our students, our community was a Hispanic community in northern New Mexico. And my parents came here from, my mom from northern New Mexico, from Taos, my dad from West Texas. And, growing up there was a blessing. It was a small town. Mm-hmm. We enjoyed, the best food at our kitchen tables. If you've ever had New Mexican food, the red and green chili is a huge staple. And, we enjoyed those types of things. Grew up through all the Catholic rituals, as everyone else in the community did. Had opportunities to hunt, to fish, enjoy the mountains and the land. So, lots of privilege in terms of the upbringing that I had. Very fortunate that I didn't have to face any of the things that my parents did along the way.
Yeah. You had expanded upon that yesterday as well.
Yeah.
And whenever I was in the back looking around, the faces of the participants hearing this story, I think that they were making a big connection to where you had a very different experience, but then you're able to couple that with the experiences of your family. And those experiences, though, travel through us still and still impact everything, that how we view things, how we respond, how we react, and maybe even how we listen to other people.
Yeah.
Having those experiences.
Yeah. So, the trajectory of my life was completely shaped by the things that my parents did and things my parents didn't do. Growing up in Taos, my mom grew up in a family that was not affluent, right? They had to walk to get water to just survive daily, to bring it to the house. My mom grew up in the public school system, which was run by the nuns. Mm-hmm. And at that time, in the early 50s, Spanish wasn't valued, even in northern New Mexico, in terms of education system. So whenever she or friends would utilize Spanish, they would get hit with the ruler. Mm-hmm. And that was their signal that, your language is not valued here, and we don't see any assets out of that language here. If you use it at home, fine, but if you're going to learn in this American system in the way that we have it structured. Mm-hmm. So, that was her reality. In West Texas, my dad grew up, again, when he was 2 years old, his mother passed away, giving birth to his younger sister. And, because of that, his father, had turned to alcohol. He moved away. My dad didn't see him again until he was 15 years old. So they were raised both by their grandmother. And, very, very rough life. I found out recently that when we had his 75th birthday, that was his first birthday party that he ever had. Wow. He had never experienced that. There was just, Christmas was just a day where they celebrated, but it wasn't about the materialistic types of things because they didn't have that. Mm-hmm. When he was in his early teens, he had to, lie so that he could work in the fields with his grandmother in the cotton fields to help earn income for the family. So he didn't have a father figure, grew up in this extreme poverty. And when his grandmother passed away, when he was 15, 16 years old, he ended up moving up to Andrews, Texas with his uncle who, my dad knew that they had an art program in the school. So he had an interest there, and that's really what sparked, his interest in education and furthering his education. And lo and behold, that's really what turned his life around. Mm-hmm. So without those role models, he went to school because of art. He ended up going to college in New Mexico, being an art and education major, and later becoming an art and education teacher, or an art and Spanish teacher. Sorry.
That's amazing.
So it was, just the things that they endured. There's racism at the time, right? Mm-hmm. They lived through the civil rights movement, the Chicano movement, all these things that really shaped who they were. Right.
Still prevalent.
Yeah. Right. So, because of what they lived through, even though my father was a Spanish teacher, I didn't learn Spanish. The community, we grew up with Spanish music. We grew up with Spanish all around us mm-hmm. with the adults, but we were not passed, that language to us as students growing up, as kids growing up. So for me, it wasn't until I got to college that I realized that there was a piece of me that was missing, because I was now in a college setting at the University of New Mexico, small fish in a big pond where nobody, the majority didn't look like me anymore. Mm-hmm. And they didn't value the Spanish that I brought from northern New Mexico, which was different from the Spanish of Mexico or other regions.
Right, yeah.
And, I did a lot of soul searching and realized that identity was important to me, and the language was really the foundation of what I, needed to ground myself in.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
You can't separate language and culture.
Exactly.
I mean, they're together. They're connected. Right. They're not able to be separated. You can't learn one without having the other, and vice versa. Yeah. But I'm sure that those experiences, obviously, there are implications to all of that have influenced you in your leadership role now and what you're doing. Right. So I'm sure that all this comes not just because you want to be an advocate necessarily for other people, which is definitely a huge part of that, but at the same time, though, always still continuing through your culturally proficient journey, remembering from where you are, your identity, and still building upon from whenever in college you were like, there's that missing piece.
Yes.
And we don't want those missing pieces for our students anymore.
Exactly.
Right. Ya basta con eso.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah, and it's really that identity piece that grounded me. And I think about how many students go through an educational system, even today, where they're not valued for the things that they bring and the culture and the language from their own homes.
Azul, what about with you?
Oh, man.
I'm excited. I'm getting chills right now just talking about this because I'm so passionate about this, and I love that you all are too.
So there's the two pieces, right? What was happening in school and then what was happening at home. Mm-hmm. And with me schooling, we went to a public school. It was called Malabar Elementary School. And for all the people that seen the movie Blood In, Blood Out, there's a big old pine tree that identifies East LA. My grandma lived right behind there, and that's where the school's located. At Malabar, that's where all my cousins went. My grandma and my aunt were in charge of folklorico and the cultural events. And because me and my cousin, we were traviesos, right? and I don't know how you say it in English, troublemakers or something. Yeah, mischievous, right?
Yeah, I'm that still.
And so it's like, I didn't go to I didn't go to pre-K. I started kinder, first grade, and then second grade, I got expelled, right? I got expelled, and we both did. My cousin and I, we both got expelled together, and they put my cousin in another public school, and I was supposedly the bad one. And because I was a bad one, my mom's like, oh, no, we have to save you, right? And so they put us in a Catholic school. They put me in a Catholic school. And
the nuns were gonna
exactly. And so the part with that was that, though, at the public school, we all spoke Spanish, right? And we learned a little bit of English. And I still remember, it was the song was, adios, 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 hasta mañana. Hello. Goodbye. We'll see you tomorrow. And that was like, ooh, I know English, right? But we were all in the same boat. Like all my classmates, everybody, we were all in the same place. And when the second grade thing happened, it happened the last week of school. So then they put me at the local private school, right? The Catholic school. And I didn't speak English, right? So instead of going to second grade, instead of going to third grade, they flunked me because I didn't know English. And I started in second grade. And the second grade teacher there, I wasn't allowed to speak. I mean, I couldn't speak Spanish. So every time I spoke Spanish, I get in trouble, I get mad at, and they would pull my patillas. They would pull my sideburns.
Really?
She would pull my sideburns. And, and my sister and I, we just had these conversations just recently. And, we both have like very similar stories. But the big one, and that's the one I shared yesterday, was like, I remember, I got in trouble for speaking Spanish, and, she made me stick out my hands, and she hit me with the yardstick, right, with the big long ruler, and it broke. And she told the principal, hey, little Jose here, he broke the ruler. And they brought in my mom, and me and my mom could not speak English. We could not defend ourselves. The principal only spoke English. The secretary only spoke English. And we had to pay like $5, for something that we didn't have, right? We didn't have that kind of money back then. And I never grew up thinking we were poor. Right. Nothing like that, right? And, we grew up a couple blocks away from the housing projects. My cousin lived in the housing projects, and that's where we spent all of our time. Later in life, we found out we spent all of our time over there because that's where we ate fideo and things like that. Yeah. Never thinking it was like because we didn't have food at the house. Yeah. Never thought that. Just this was the time of our life, and this is where our friends are, and this is where we hang out. So that incident happened, and again, just very tough. And then of course, this is where I meet like the superheroes in my life, right? Because then in third grade, there was the teacher. Her name was Miss Lopez, and she was this beautiful, powerful, bigger than life Black woman from Belize. Okay. So you can imagine, I walked in and I was like, this is going to be tough. And then she spoke Spanish, right? And she was this, again, right, this beautiful Black woman with this presence. And she's like, yo te voy a ayudar.
Wow.
No te preocupes, right? And I was like, what? Oh, my God. So the bad part was I ended up losing lunch and PE and things like that other kids were doing. But she was starting pulling me out to help me with English. I'm going to fast forward because this happened right before we shut down for COVID. This is what happened. I put a post on Facebook and I said, always thinking about Ms. Lopez, my third grade teacher who taught me English, who made me believe in myself. I just want to always, remind people that there's teachers out there, yada, yada. Always be thankful for the teachers that come into your life. Then I get this random little comment, and it says, I think you're talking about my mom.
Oh, my God.
Oh, my God, right? So, and look at the power of this, right? I talked to the young lady, and she says, Azul, my mom is in, she's fighting cancer, and, she lives out in Phoenix, and, she's not doing too well. We're just all getting ready. And I was like, all right. I said, cool. I said, is there a way I can get a hold of her? Can I communicate with her or whatever? So she gives me her phone number. I call her. And as soon as she heard my voice, she said, Jose, is that you?
Oh, my gosh.
And she's like, oh, my God, Jose. I saw that you got... She said, I saw that you got your honor, you were an honor student in high school. I saw that you got some awards at LMU, my university. And she goes, and then I lost track of you. How's your mom? How's your sister?
Wow.
And this is my third grade teacher who remembered me and remembered my mom and my sister. And it was just, and we cried together.
Yeah, I can
imagine. We laughed. She asked about some of my classmates, if I knew where they were at, right? I mean, this is my third grade teacher. Imagine how many third graders haven't, passed through her classroom, but she remembered me.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And so, again, just a beautiful, powerful conversation. I was able to tell her, thank you so much for everything and all that kind of stuff. And then a couple of days later, she went home. She went home, and it's like, wow.
I'm so glad that you were able to talk to her, though.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the beauty, right? Like, to me, I think of like, that's God.
Yeah.
If you don't believe in like
Talking about
that kind of
God-wink.
stuff, that's just like, dude, this is the power. And again, for me, I always want to share that story, because I did have a really bad second grade teacher, but then I had Ms. Lopez, right? And she did. I learned so much English in that 1 year. It was amazing. And then later I started kind of being able to defend myself a little bit more, and things like that. And interestingly, it wasn't until 8th grade I started feeling a little bit more confident in who I was. I was still an F+ student, I got a couple D's, got a couple C's, but A and P kind of a guy, Okay. And then when I went into high school, so I went to like the best high school in the world. It's called Cathedral High School in LA. And when I got there, everybody had the same story. We were all the same person. We all had struggles at home. We all had this and that going on, and we were all trying to figure out life together. So for me, then the high school became my brotherhood. It became my area of like, solace. And so when in those courses, or in high school, we started taking like, all of a sudden I'm like, oh, AP Spanish? Oh man, this is easy. What? I can use my language. I can use this and that. And then our literature teacher, her name was Miss Gerard, she started like feeding me anyway, Chicano study books, right? And literature and Rodolfo Anaya books, right?
Yeah.
And it's fun, now I live in Albuquerque, so I know them. But I started learning, and my nickname throughout, like, people call me Indio, right? And my grandma, I shared yesterday, right? My grandma was a curandera.
Yeah.
And so I grew up knowing our traditional stuff. I was her helper. There was a lot of things that we weren't allowed to do, things that we hid, cultural stuff that wasn't like in our way, just wasn't allowed. And I would always tell my mom, like my grandma would be like, but it's out there, like people are doing it, like we should be proud, we should like share it. My grandma would be like, no, this is something that stays in the home, right? We protect it. And so for me, that piece was always something like our indigenous stuff that we did at home, and then the life that we lived outside of the house, right? And how do you balance that? And then, you go to undergrad, so here I go to college, and all of a sudden it's like, you go to Mecha, and I'm like, nah, dude, I know how to do that. Or let me show you this, or let me show you that, or, things it's like I kind of had I knew stuff, I guess, right? And I was, on my end, like I was culturally grounded, but I never knew how to show it. I kind of just hid that from the world, I guess, right? And so that piece that Michael was talking about, that identity piece, right? It starts becoming critical. And then you start intertwining it with like, okay, you know what? My language is important. My culture is important. And this is who I am, right? And you start growing into that. You know? So, yeah.
So now, where would you say you are from being culturally grounded and not sharing it versus being culturally grounded and sharing it with the world?
Well, here's the thing, right? So like when we work with our youth, right? And in LA, I worked a lot I used to volunteer a lot at juvenile halls and work with different youth groups and things like that. But the power is in connecting with our students, right? As a teacher. And when you say something in the language, it has that much more power.
Yes, it does.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, even like in New Mexico, right? We have different tribes, different communities. And when we go into, the prison system, when you talk to someone in the language, their eyes get big, they smile, they're like, there's hope, there's everything else that's there just because you use that. And so that's the connection piece, right? And that's what keeps us grounded. Because life is tough, but that grounding piece, right, is our culture and our language. And like with our youth, I always tell them, I said, look, once we're grounded, then we grow. And, the stronger we're grounded, the higher we can reach for them stars, So,
yeah. I think it's interesting because whenever we talk about using, like, so you speak a language that someone else speaks if they don't speak English, for example, and how their eyes light up. And it's but then you said hope, right? And I think oftentimes that we miss the point that whenever that happens, it's not just about we're doing a translation or interpretation. It's about there's an emotion and a feeling that changes inside of you whenever you have that. That's that connection, and it's way deeper than just trying to communicate with somebody. I mean, they felt something that I think is so powerful that people do dissertations over, and that's hope. I think the power of hope. And so if we are able to use language in such a way to give hope to our teachers, hope to our stakeholders, and most specifically hope to our students, that breaks down a lot of barriers right there.
Right. And in that hope, as educators, it's about understanding your students, understanding that there's more than just getting through the curriculum. There's building people up. I gave you an example yesterday of I had the opportunity to sit on a Department of Education, U.S. Department of Education roundtable session last year, and at the table, one of my colleagues who runs a Montessori dual language indigenous program, the question came up of how do we determine what student success is? And, she didn't go to, we want to have the highest test scores. We want to have the best curriculums. We want to build good people out of our students. And that's the bottom line, right? It's not up to us to determine for these students what that success is or what path they take, but it's about that hope that there is more and that I am important. And through education, being seen. And that goes true for teachers too.
Exactly.
They need that support in order to be reflective, in order to be able to support students to do the best that they can.
Well, many of the educators that we have today, specifically in the field of bilingual, dual language, multilingual education, a lot of those educators, and even yesterday, speaking with some of them, asking them questions, how many of you have felt this or seen this or experienced this? And we're raising their hands. And so I said, principals, directors, coordinators that are in this room too, look around because we also have experienced things like this. So as we talk about trying to, create this sense of belonging and all these, cultural components and being reflective and responsive and proficient that we're talking about for students, we got to do it with our staff as well.
Absolutely.
Because you all just told stories that you went through some very traumatic experiences for no good reason because you were just being you, right? And so that is just it just blows my mind. But I think that's where we get so passionate about what we do in dual language education specifically, because we know that not only is it an asset, but this is the time that we get to celebrate people. And I think whenever we focus on, whenever I was a principal, for example, all the testing, of course we focused on academics. And I told the staff, I know I have the title as the principal. I'm just a teacher, facilitator doing this, but I'm just with you. I'll make those hard decisions at the end. And if it messes up, it's my fault, all those things. But if I look like the principal and act like the principal, slap me because I'm not doing my job. I want to be with you and doing stuff all the time. So hold me accountable. But our focus was on that. It was on the kids, their well-being, being happy, getting to be themselves, sharing their cultures, their identity. And I said, and all the test stuff will come organically at the end. So that was not the focus at all. And guess what? We were the highest performing elementary school in the whole Tulsa metropolitan area. And they learned it in 2 languages. And they were passing the reading test and everything else. And I said, guess what? Of course, we are educators. So we focused on standards and language standards and all those things. But that was secondary to the number one thing. And the number one thing was that child.
Absolutely.
Them being happy and being a good person, good citizen in this society that we're in.
That's right. And it's looking at what you're saying, right? It's that assets-based lens, right? And how do we make sure that we remind ourselves to use it, or that we stay on that lens, right? Michael's saying we want good people, right? That's the goal, right? That's the human part. And I remember in one of the schools that I used to work at, we were doing this project, and we were bringing experts, right? And they brought in this person who was the big time expert on papel picado.
Okay.
And the person had all these metal stamps, all these professional, a whole layout of things. And he was showing us how to, grab the little stamp and hit certain areas. And then he was showing us, right? Cool. Product, beautiful. Cool. So then we do it after school. Okay. After school, here comes the parents. Okay? So here's La Señora Lupe, and she grabs a ficha, a bottle cap, right? Bends it, bites it, turns it, and uses that. Grabs some more, starts doing all kinds of things, and what she created was just like, bam!
So awesome.
And so the expert, he's just like laughing, and he was like, see, that's what it's about, right? Like, look at this, look at this. He goes, look at my stuff. And it was all legit, artwork stuff, whatever. And then she's just doing what she does.
The real deal.
You know what I mean?
Uh-huh.
And my students were just like, dude, your mom is awesome. Oh, your mom this and that, right? And so these are assets. Who would have thought? Who would have, I didn't even think to ask or anything like that. But then later it was just like, you know what? Yeah, let's start bringing in some of the fam to the classroom. And let's look at, what they have to offer. And it was just amazing. And it was such a beautiful, strong year, And then, of course, growing and me learning as a teacher, to be able to tap into those resources, but it's there.
I think we have so many opportunities to really build upon the assets of our students and families, and we just got to create the space for that. We have to be intentional, though, about it. Our leaders are often just so busy and overwhelmed with a million other things that, unfortunately, it becomes like this secondhand conversation on the side sometimes if you get to have it. And I just am just so passionate that if we start there, if that's what we're always beginning, then everything else will filter through that more accordingly and appropriately. But we have got to focus on the assets of
absolutely,
of our students and our families,
Yeah.
and not feel like I don't need to tell you. I mean, we might need to explain like the education system might look differently and things of that, but like I don't need to tell you how to be engaged. I need to sit back and listen. How can you be engaged? How do you want to be engaged? What are ways that we can participate in this together?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. And that's one of the things is that a lot of times those assets within the community get overlooked, right? There's opportunities to do the same types of things and to enhance your curriculum by bringing in people from the community that can demonstrate, what you can pay someone to come in and do as well, right?
Yeah.
And they do it just as well or better. As we work with dual language programs all around the country, we're constantly reminding administrators, teachers, teacher leaders that your dual language program, for it to be sustainable, it has to be based on the community, the needs of the community, the beliefs, the values of the community. Because you're going to have teachers that come and go. You're going to have administrators that come and go, but your community is always going to be the community.
Exactly.
And if you're not building your program around what's important to them, it's a disservice, and it's again something that's being done to the community rather than with and by and for the community.
Exactly.
So as a teacher, then your job is, how do I unpack the standards? How do I unpack the curriculum so that it reflects my classroom, right? And here's the tricky part. My classroom today, I might have it on lock, and I might, this is perfect this year. And then next year, I got to do it again.
Oh, yeah, you can't copy and paste that lesson plan.
Right,
I did that last year. I'm like, well, guess what? This is this year. And there's different kids here.
Right,
exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And anyone who's been a teacher knows that your kids are not going to look the same from year to year, right? And again, it's about the stories that they bring and those assets that they have. How do we make sure that we're not just doing a basic cookie cutter type of thing and hoping that kids understand it, right? We need to really understand our students and build from that.
100%.
And we will be right back. Are you ready to take your K through 12 multilingual programs to new heights? Look no further than the experts at Kelly B's Consulting. We're not just consultants, we're partners in education with a passion for empowering students and enriching your classrooms. At Kelly B's Consulting, we understand the unique cultural and linguistic needs of your diverse student population. Our team of experienced educators will work alongside you, tailoring strategies that transform your multilingual programs. Don't miss out on this opportunity. Visit www.kellybsconsultingllc.com today to learn more and schedule your consultation. Kelly B's Consulting, shaping the future of K through 12 multilingual education across the nation. Your success is our commitment. Contact us now and let's start building a brighter tomorrow together. And now, back to the show.
So I want to get into dual language questions specifically, but just before we do that, I know that there are many educators out there who are working in schools. For example, there's one school that I'm thinking of specifically in my head, but I know many other schools like this. About 50% of the population, not about, it's 51% of the school population are bilingual students. The overwhelming majority, apart from maybe 3, it's English and Spanish are the 2 languages. So whenever you're in a situation like that and you are in a monolingual school system, there's no dual language programming, nothing, but yet it's like I was talking to one administrator and I said, no matter how you cut it or you look at it or whatever, you put a name on it, this is a bilingual dual language school.
Right. Because
you have bilingual dual language students. That's what it is, right? And so I know you don't have quote unquote the program. And so we have conversations around, of course, always considering the cultural proficient lens through everything that we do.
Right,
but how do we incorporate some sheltered instruction practices along with dual language education practices? Teachers can still create space for translanguaging, for example, to happen, even if they're not bilingual or multilingual themselves. We can create spaces, though, for students to be in charge of doing all of this. So we get to have conversations around that. But I want to hear from you all, right? What would you say to that teacher who has the newcomer student or the student who is building upon their proficiency levels in more than one language? What do they need to know from hearing your stories? Because we're in a different age now where we may not always have the physical ruler out, which just is so painful for me to even consider. And I hate that anyone would ever have to experience any ridicule like that. But we have metaphorical rulers happening all the time sometimes. But for the teacher that is just really wanting to know, how do I help the student? But I don't have experience in this, and I'm not in a setting that has a lot of other bilingual educators. What would you recommend for them to do? What would you have needed if you were, Michael and Jose in that classroom now, and you don't speak, Azul, you're little Jose, like Ms. Lopez was saying, and helping you. What did you need, and what can they maybe do to make that child feel better and have that sense of belonging while still gaining academic knowledge that they need?
Yeah, for me, I think number 1 and number 2. Number 1 is you tap into the linguistic repertoire of our students, of that child, right? I was muffled. I was silenced. I didn't count, right? I didn't want to go to school. School was the worst thing ever because I couldn't express myself. I couldn't anything. Yeah. So imagine in one setting where, I don't want to say I was a cool little kid, but, we were always like, oh, yeah, da-da-da, and, happy and everything like that. I could express myself. I was like pretty good at kickball. This is, first grade, second grade stuff. And then all of a sudden a new setting and I'm nobody and I'm not there, right? So I can't do anything, right? So how or what our linguistic repertoire looks like, we want to tap into that as educators, right? And then as a teacher now in the classroom, you're the certified one, you went through the school stuff and everything, be intentional about it. Right. So now you have a particular purpose. If my purpose is I'm going to teach you English, or my purpose is I'm going to help you develop your academic Spanish, I'm going to use what you just shared with me, right? Your linguistic repertoire, your experiences. I'm tapping into your cultural linguistic, richness that you're bringing into the classroom. I'm going to use that to leverage this intentional piece of whatever it is we're trying to learn,
I think we have to create those spaces, allow it to happen. Exactly.
Yep.
And a lot of teachers sometimes feel nervous because they say, well, I don't speak the other language, so I don't know what to do.
Yeah.
And then some teachers, though, are just so into do anything in the language, but I don't know how to grade it or look at it. And so I feel like sometimes there needs to be some help for the educator to be able to do what they're supposed to be doing as well, and not just they still have to put in the work. You can't just say, hey, I'll allow you to enter the language and then throw it to the side and not really look at it. You're not giving that same reflective feedback like that child deserves as well. But I think it's just important to remind the educators and the leaders out there listening right now is that you changed from one room to another and you had belonging and then you didn't belong.
Right.
All of a sudden, then
Right.
you were othered and you were pushed out. And all we needed to know is that even though I might speak only English, and it might be the dominant language overall, it's not a better language.
Right.
Right. And, you know,
I need to use
education,
both languages. Use whatever language you have, right?
education is a team sport, right? We can't assume that teachers are in these isolated boxes in their classrooms and, you know, and hope the best for those kids during that year. You know, those kids, and we hear it, you know, lots of times now that teachers don't look at them as, you know, just their kids. All the kids within the school are their kids, and they're responsible for, you know, creating good people, helping to build good people from all these students. So teachers, you know, we can't put them in situations where they're feeling isolated. We need to make sure that they have those tools, right? If we want them to really get the most out of students, we need to make sure that we're giving them the most in terms of professional development and, you know, resources and even the right types of curriculums, right? And yes, there has to be, you know, certain things that everybody's doing the same way within districts, but where's their flexibility to make sure that they're able to meet the needs of those individual students? That's a critical piece in, you know, creating an education for students and experience that really is going to help them to see that they are not just receiving information, right? There's opportunities to use content and to use the second language that they're learning in authentic ways, right? There's specifically and deliberately being set up in the classroom that way. And that doesn't just happen by chance or by accident, right? Teachers need to understand how to do that.
Yes.
Because in dual language programs, you know, even in a 90-10 dual language program where kindergarten 90% of the day is in Spanish, you know, there's still all this other influence outside of the school with English because of, you know, the communities we live in. So that 90% of a 6-hour day is still only a fraction of the exposure and language use that students are engaged in. So we need to make sure that, you know, every one of those minutes that we're spending in the content areas, in the language, the target language in our programs is deliberately planned for. And teachers need support in order to be able to do that. And they need that opportunity to collaborate.
Yes.
Because there's lots of ideas out there. In districts that we work in, you know, we help them to see that you're not alone in this. There's, you know, you're in Washington State. There's a district in Illinois that's going through the same thing.
Yeah.
But they've come up with these resources and they've come up with these strategies or systems that are helping them to be successful.
And they made a commitment to it.
Exactly.
They're being very intentional.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, fortunately with technology nowadays, an educator who is monolingual is able to utilize and leverage technology in such a way that could encourage the students to still use their entire linguistic repertoires and translanguaging practices, cross-linguistic awareness, metalinguistic awareness, things of that nature. But then and then using that technology to, you know, maybe help them, you know, translate to kind of understand. But going through that process as we're acquiring content and language at the same time, in my research and some of my experiences, one of the best things that I've ever seen is whenever the teacher will allow themselves to also be the language learner. If they will learn the language alongside with the student, all those names that maybe a general education teacher doesn't know, like cross-linguistic awareness, metalinguistic awareness, translanguaging, sure, those are great things, but the teacher that doesn't, like, what are you talking about? Like, if you can just be a language learner alongside them, all those things will start happening automatically. It will be bridging components. The teacher will say, oh, we say it like this, like my grandmother's house, but you say la casa de mi abuela, so you don't have the apostrophe. So what that means is, and blah, blah, blah. And they can start making those connections. So then it starts, you know, to build. So I just say, hey, one, have grace and compassion for yourself. Have grace and compassion for your students and learn alongside them. Learn the language with them. And that in and of itself will allow you to know. I mean, I'm not going to spend an hour to teach you how to use a graphic organizer. Once you're having that, once you know that student individually and you're learning alongside with them, you can figure out how to use the graphic organizer, right? Like, that's not what I'm here to teach you about. But again, it's that culture part that comes on top. And this is where I think, you know, leading into like the dual language education, the 3 pillars that we know from the guiding principles of dual language education, but that third pillar of sociocultural competence. the educator allowing themselves to be part of that process with the child, I think is a great step and a great, crack in all this for us to be able to get in deeper and understand the sociocultural competence piece. But enough about hearing from me. We want to hear about you. Like, why is that third pillar? First of all, let's remind all the listeners of the three pillars, right? So bilingualism and biliteracy, grade level, high academic grade level achievement, right?
In both languages.
Yeah, that's a big part.
Right.
Both languages. Right. Hear that again.
Because academic Spanish, man.
But the third part, and the one that I'm most passionate about from my research, is it's that sociocultural competence piece. And I think that's where, whenever I see educators come in that have great teaching practices, great pedagogical practices, a good understanding, and then they still don't see the results and they don't know why.
Yeah.
Right.
And I'm like, I think, and I don't know this for sure, but I feel like what I'm seeing mostly is that it's that third pillar. It's the cultural piece, the understanding, not just the cultural, but specifically that sociocultural component. Mm-hmm. And that is missing so much that it's like, that's the glue that is bringing everything else together, right?
That's that humanistic piece of what we do.
Right, yeah.
It's the building of the good people. In that,
boom.
Right. There's power in teachers being vulnerable with students and showing them that, there are different ways to say these words. There's different ways for us to, different customs that we have, and it's not mine is better than yours, or there's any kind of status to it. It's celebrating the fact that there's diversity, and we come together and we're stronger for it.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, for me, I think of this is the importance of identity, and as a teacher, right, you want to know your student's story, and then you want to, so it's like what is your story, and then what is our story?
Boom.
And then how are we going to build from that? Working, I guess one of the stories that, like me personally, I've been deported twice.
Okay.
I was born in the U.S. I have my I have my birth certificate, and I've been deported, twice, officially twice, yes, and one time, it's just, I share that because when I bring that up, all of a sudden my students are like, oh, you know what happened? Or, hey, this, and then we start hearing their stories, but we start making those connections, right? And we start hearing those stories, and then we understand. And like for us, for me, I guess, when a lot of parents are like, but we want them to learn English as soon as possible. And so then it's like, but we do that with building on the Spanish the students already have, the foundations that the other language foundations they already have.
What's confusing, right? Because it's counterintuitive. Because on one hand, I'm the parent, I went to school and I got my hand slapped. And now you're telling me that you're saying, right, I want you to be speaking Spanish, and so I think that there are some parents that they get confused about that. And then unfortunately, and this is my opinion, is that in society, whenever they don't feel like it is valued, that's why they're wanting their kids to feel valued. So then they start, maybe unconsciously even supporting destructive practices, not realizing that this is a benefit. This is an asset. We want you to be bilingual or multilingual. I mean, not only are there health benefits to this, but I mean, you can get better jobs. Like, and I always tell people, like, I've never gone to a job and be like, we'd love to hire you, but you're bilingual. Like that's never been like that's why you're not going to get the job. Like that's not it. But for me, and this is where I love these conversations, and I love to be vulnerable in this as well. And we know this. We've had these conversations in our field before. And I share this all the time, and I try to do my work justice in this, because why are you celebrating me as the guy from Tulsa, Oklahoma, with blonde hair and blue eyes for being bilingual, and then you're trying to tell that kid over there that you need to just learn English?
Right.
That is so unfair, and it's so backwards to me. And I can't comprehend it, but I hear it and I see it, and so I try to be.
Cuando el güero habla español y todo está, oh no, qué suave, oh wow, él sí puede, and then we're expected. It should be a matter of fact.
Right. And we don't even, like, English isn't the official language of the nation. Anyway,
right.
You know what I mean? I'm like, if you really want to be here, like, do you speak Cherokee? You know what I mean? Like, do you, like those were like the languages though. Right. But at least I can stand here and say it. Some people are just like, oh, I'm just like, well, sometimes told me like, you'd be so proud of me because I told the kids in the hallway that they better be speaking English. And I looked, I said, what? Like, you're so kind and I really appreciate you, but why do you think I'd be proud of that? Like, you kind of know for what I stand and like, and how I speak and things of that nature. And she said, oh, I just thought that you'd be proud. And so it was an opportunity for a conversation, right? I could have taken it down a whole nother road and then, made her feel, bad or upset or whatever. But we got to have a conversation about that. But so many people just don't see it. And that's why I feel like the role of dual language education, one, it's the highest level of gifted and talented studies that you could have for our children. But that's why it's so important for us to keep continuing to promote dual language education. So that way, whenever we do become these adults, that we have that level of social cultural competence and that we can say, no, I celebrate it. I see the benefits of it. Let's do more of this as opposed to being subtractive and deficit based.
Absolutely.
You don't know unless you're in the program and understand this, right?
Yeah. And the crazy part is that we have over 40 years of research that show this is the best way for students to learn and maintain their identity and who they are, which, for me, I learned in college is critical, right? That was something that really grounded me the rest of my life and the rest of my career. So we need to follow research, right? Collier and Thomas have been telling us this for many years. Their studies have been replicated.
Even on this podcast, we've discussed it with them.
Right. And their new book is coming out. So
they'll be launching a new book early 2025.
Oh, excellent!
It's a second edition of their first book, English Learners in a Transformed World.
Yep, I have all their books.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
this I almost got all your books.
Yeah.
Yeah. We'll have the link to the books also in the description, listeners.
Yeah.
So that way you can, you'll get access to all this.
So
too.
it's a new version of that first book. It's going to be more of a collaborative version where people can utilize it in professional development, PLCs, those types of things, and it's really about, like I said before, it is a team sport, and people need to understand that all these students in the school are our students. And the best way to do that is to make sure that the knowledge and the information that they have is the same, and everybody's speaking about all of our students in the same terms and how we can support them.
Yeah. One last thing I want to make sure to touch on, little bit heavy, but you guys are just such good experts in this, and I feel like it's going to be important to have a space to pause and to hear from you all and to allow our listeners to hear. And was mentioned yesterday, and I'm so thankful that we had a free conference that no one had to pay for, but people could come and could hear a message. And so, but I want to expand upon the role that gentrification plays in dual language programming. And I feel like oftentimes it's not discussed maybe as much as I think it should be for real good understanding. But there are some areas of the country that are just really killing it with dual language education and doing great things and kind of understand this overall. And then there are other areas of the country that aren't doing anything. And then there are some areas that are trying to get into it and trying to understand more. And leaders in districts, I know them. I'm thinking of some person in my head. They're trying to understand more. They know that they need it. And so we're implementing it. Things are happening, but we're still learning and growing ourselves as we're in that process. And so I try to... I don't try. We have really direct conversations around gentrification and what that could look like. And so I'm glad that we get to have those talks, but they're just so few and far between. So I really want to be able to allow a space right now for you two to discuss, one, what is it for people that maybe don't necessarily understand what that is? And then two, what role does it play and what are its implications and how should educators best respond?
So, the gentrification of dual language programs is kind of what you see in terms of the gentrification of neighborhoods, right? There's this gem that people start to realize, this is a great place to be. And in dual language programs, which, have been designed to support our English learners as a matter of equity to the curriculum, the equity and the access to curriculum, through the research that Collier and Thomas and others have done, there's benefits for all students to learn in this way, right? Special education students. Collier and Thomas have research from North Carolina where African American students were involved in dual language programs. 2 to 3
grade levels ahead of their monolingual peers. Right.
Right. Why would we not want that for all of our students, right?
That's my question all the time.
Yeah. So like you said, it is an enrichment of education. And when people see these gems, they take these programs, or there have been instances where the programs that have been designed to provide this equity in access to our curriculum and our system for English learners, and it's been, in some ways hijacked. And the original intent and purpose and the population that was being served has in some cases gotten pushed out, through systems, through squeaky wheels, through things like that. Those kids sometimes are not able to access it in the way that they originally did, because they're trying to make more space. Obviously, in two-way programs, you have a mix of native English speakers, native, target language or Spanish speakers, and together, there's power in them learning from each other and being the experts in each of those languages. But lots of times, we see that students are, native English or native Spanish speakers can get pushed out to make that additional space, and then over time, it happens more and more, and the focus of what this original program was gets shifted, and it really becomes a situation where it's a disservice to the students that we're trying to support the most.
Right. So there's that focus shift.
Right.
And Michael yesterday shared that story about that one.
Yeah, we do site visits. We do retreats and site visits with districts and schools to help them start programs. There was a district that had brought us in to work with a number of their schools in shoring up and really recommitting to the ideals of their dual language programs. We had just finished the morning session of classroom observations, and kids were lining up in different classrooms to go to lunch. I was walking with a teacher, district administrator, and that teacher's class towards the lunchroom, and as we were going to the office, and as we were walking by, we were talking in Spanish. Her kids were talking in Spanish, and we passed by another classroom. Teachers said hi to each other, and kid at the front of the line in the other class, standing at the doorway, told his teacher, "Maestra, yo también hablo español." And saying, why is it that I can't be in a class like that? He was in an English-only class. And, that's a prime example of the fact that there was not space for this kid who, identity, begging for opportunities to be himself and express himself in the best way he can, not having access. So that led to some good conversations once we got back to the office about, they're a great district, doing all the right things, systems in place, even going as far as doing their own research on effectiveness of their program. But there's these instances where we still have students that fall through the cracks, and we need to make sure that we're not letting that happen.
And sometimes, they fall through the cracks, and sometimes it's intentional. And, sometimes they say, no, well, this is our quota. And they look at it like that, right? They said, well, we have X amount of brown students, we have X amount of white students, and that's what it is. And it's kind of like,
wow. Kids aren't quotas.
Right. Right. But they talk like that. And that's why I say, and that's the thing. And so they are looking just at numbers. And so just off the bat, just like that, it's already not the focus.
Right.
Right? It's already gone.
That's why it's important for the superintendent to be 100% committed to this in the exact same way. And they don't have to necessarily be the expert. I mean, we can't be experts in everything. Right. But I have to make sure that I have a good enough understanding and that I have hired the right people in place and the right processes are in place to not allow for this to happen. Right. And that's the conversation. Of course, there's a lot of buildup before you don't just walk in one July and say, you know what we'll do this year? Let's do dual language. That's not that's not like that. There's planning that goes into all of this. But you get to a point though where hopefully you have involved your stakeholders in your community and that you've really focused on the collective impact.
Right.
Because I'm a prime example. Looking even at LinkedIn, you can look at your LinkedIn, anyone's LinkedIn. We don't have the same job for 10, 15, 20 years. We're moving around, things are happening. But whenever you have collective impact, that sacerdote, they've been there for 50 years. And they're not going anywhere. That leader in the Latino agency here in Oklahoma, they're going to be here for a long. They're not going anywhere. These are the leaders in our communities that they need to be ever engaged and involved in this. And whenever we are transitioning in and out of our professional organizations, that collective impact though still stays right there where we left it.
Exactly. Yeah. So it becomes that vehicle for equity, right? and it is social justice,
Yes.
right? And
Yeah, it's we always look at districts who are having those conversations as opportunities to move in the right direction. Sometimes they're not sure. Do we even have the ability to become a full dual language program? So sometimes they bring us in just to evaluate the programs that they currently have, whether it's ESL pullout or transitional, and just to get a sense of where they're at. Because a lot of times they do have assets in place in terms of human and other resources. So, just starting to have those conversations is great to see. We obviously support dual language program development, but we're also advocates. We do lots of work to just have conversations with people about, you're right. You either you have kids from many different languages, and translanguaging might be the best thing for you, but strategies in the instruction in English, while you're valuing all these different languages, is maybe another way to do it. But it's about making sure that people have that asset lens. Excuse me, and in that, just giving people the opportunity to see that no matter what type of program they have, again, they have to make the most of it. And identity is that grounding factor that really helps people to understand what direction they can and should go in with their students.
We got to create a holistic ecosystem.
Exactly.
For our students, for sure. But it is always the number one focus whenever we are having this serious conversation about so if you really are going to implement a dual language program, just know that as you go through this, the first people that get into that program are the ones that need it, and the second people that get in is if there's space, if there's
right.
If sure you got 10 spaces open and you got no big deal, but if you got 10 spaces open and you got 20 more that are already the students that need this service, they're the ones that get in first.
And that's really our focus is first and foremost, we do this for the benefit of English learners.
And I'm just so fortunate that I've been able to have the experience that I had from a privileged standpoint to be able to do this, but to learn language and culture. And my salsa partner, Marti, she's from Colombia, but she goes, que lindo eres adoptado para nosotros aquí en Colombia. And whenever she said that, other people have said that. And
time out. Le dije a Michael, dude, his accent, he's like Colombian.
Oh,
that's what I said.
Hey. Okay, Marti, escuchaste, mi amor. That's so funny. But I didn't take that lightly.
Right.
I mean, it actually, and what's Marti and I were like, I necesito agua, because we're like, oh, I'm about to chillar, I'm like, and so when she said it in that moment, I was just like, necesito agua. I was like, because I take it real, really close to my heart for someone to say that, and so I just think that's the beauty of these cultural connections and the availability. There are priorities within dual language education, but whenever we are able to create these holistic ecosystems and we're able to build these bridges together, to have someone like Marti, who has this amazing story coming from Colombia to the United States whenever she was 18 years old, to where she cut my hair one day. She has clips and hips, so it's like you get the clips in the back and the hips in the front, so it's dancing and everything. And then we became salsa partners and started dancing. And she always says that she's very kind. She always says there's some power whenever you're coming and you and I are doing this together. Me from Colombia, looking like I'm from Colombia, and you just puro gringo, like este güero salsero, like the blonde hair, the blue eyes, the white skin. But she said, but it's just so great because it's it shows this connection between us. And she says there's some different power in sometimes you saying something versus me saying something. But then also as a gay man, whenever she says something on my behalf as well, sometimes people hear that even differently. And so there's just all these different, not even just geographical cultures, but just culture within culture in general. But I think those connections, and whenever we can make those connections, it's so beautiful. And I think that's a big power. In
speaking of connections, it is that power of language that brought you together with her.
That was it. That was it. Yeah.
Those are connections that we need to value, right?
And then there's the even thing, in that language, it comes from the heart. Like whenever, for example, if you're going to tell someone that you love them, you typically say it in the language that has the deepest,
sí,
emotional connection to
Tiene
it.
más pasión.
El que tiene más pasión, así, right? And I can communicate with her and she can understand me in a different way even, and vice versa. And sometimes we'll find each other, even calling each other just to be like, I just need to explain this to you, pero en español para que me entienda, porque, it's like, it's just different than,
Right.
saying it in the other language. And so it's just that deeper connection. And if we know, again, we have health benefits, emotional benefits, career benefits to all of this, I don't necessarily know why we don't talk about it more and do more, but I'm thankful to have people like you in the field here as advocates, out there spreading this amazing message, and most specifically across the nation, but most specifically, I really appreciate for the work that you did here yesterday in Oklahoma.
And we're glad to do it. Like I said, we know that a lot of the people that we met with yesterday don't have dual language programs, but they have these students in their classrooms, and they're looking for opportunities. They're looking for other ways to enhance whatever it is that they are able to do.
Well, I mean this in all sincerity. I'm fortunate to still be a part of, and having been the president of the Oklahoma Association for Bilingual Education, an affiliate of NABE. We also have the Multicultural Education Institute from the University of Central Oklahoma. And then we have some other just great people here in the state who are trying to discuss and spread this message even more. And so to have you all come in and continue that momentum with us, it's greatly appreciated. And I'm hopeful that in Oklahoma, we'll start being one of the leading dual language states.
We would love to see that
as well. I mean, because we do have Cherokee English dual language school. In
Yeah, we
Tahlequah.
learned a little bit about that yesterday.
Yeah, I was wondering if you had, whenever you had visited the museum. And so point is, it's growing and there are conversations around it. And I'm so excited about that. But having people like you here present and then sharing this in front of other leaders that we have in the state, I think will make an even deeper impact. So I want to say sinceramente gracias por eso.
Igualmente.
Definitely. As we wrap up right now, are there any closing words or thoughts that you would like to share? Like not any, I guess I shouldn't say like final thoughts because they're just final, but some closing words or reflection or anything.
Before we get to closing words, I just wanted to also mention that Dual Language Education of New Mexico, this year we're hosting our 30th annual La Cosecha Conference in Santa Fe, New Mexico.
Yes, let's do it.
If you've never been to La Cosecha, it really is a place to go. When I was an administrator, that was the place that I would go every November to get refreshed myself, right? And to see that me and our staff, we're not alone in this journey. There's lots of knowledge out there. This year we had a record number of submissions. We had 475 people that submitted to take the 281 presentation slots that we have. So,
I know.
So it's a interesting, very rigorous process that our team goes through to make sure that we, really find the best presentations for people to experience. We do give extra points when it's done in a language other than English, and we give extra points when it's done by a teacher, because we want that perspective to be front and center, because that's really where the work is
boots on the
happening.
ground.
Exactly, right?
Yeah.
That you can't get closer to the students than that.
And this year, La Cosecha will be in Santa Fe, New Mexico.
Yes.
We alternate every year. So
Between Albuquerque and Santa Fe, correct?
Yeah.
So November 13th through 16th, mark your calendars. We would love to see you.
And the one thing that I say, like to all of our partners and to everybody else in the struggle, right? This is our time to celebrate, to get rejuvenated, and to network and grow. Right? Porque todos somos familia, and we are together in this way. And so a lot of times for me, I'm just networking. Hey, you need to meet so-and-so, you need to meet so-and-so, because the same thing is happening. And all of a sudden, lunch becomes one of the most powerful things, right?
Exactly.
We always feed. We always provide lunch. But that's where we see the power of our conference. Or me, anyway. Right? I mean, don't get me wrong. The sessions are tremendous all the time, right?
Sure.
And I'm always falling in love with all these teachers that are doing amazing things. And it's like, wow, check this out. Oh, my God, look at this, right? But the in-between, the networking, creating family, because like Michael said earlier, right? This is a team sport. We're all in it together.
Cada día somos más.
Exactly.
Juntos.
Juntos podemos cambiar el mundo.
Yes,
Right?
yes, exactly. Yeah. Man, I want to go back to New Mexico with you all. This was so fantastic. Thanks for being here.
Absolutely.
Thanks for sharing your stories.
Thank you for having us.
Like you've really enriched this space, and this will be long lasting. And so you've left a great huella. So I appreciate it.
Mm-hmm.
A great mark for sure. Well, hey, one last thing though, where can we find information about dual language education in Mexico?
So online you can find our website at DLeNM, Dual Language Education New Mexico.org, DLeNM.org. If you're interested in the conference, lacosechaconference.org is where you can find more information. Early bird pricing is already closed. We are looking at about 4,000 people in Santa Fe this year. So as Azul was saying, it is a great place to network. And we have top researchers, experts. We have district leaders. We have teachers. We have everyone that is
You got Kelito.
focused.
Allí estaré también con ustedes. So yeah.
Awesome. Everyone focused on dual language or supporting multilingual learners in creative, innovative ways is going to be there. So
Well, it's a fantastic conference.
yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
And we love partnering with you all. Our organization, we've been around for 21 years officially, and we're all about building bridges, right? We go out and we do work, but we know we're not the only people that do this work, and we don't see the other service providers as competitors. They're family. They're people supporting
partners.
the cause. This is a movement, and it can't happen without the support of all of us.
Yeah. One of the things we're proud of is we're building an indigenous language strand.
Yes.
So we are hearing about, our native languages, our heritage languages, and again, creating that network to build. And then we celebrate with a powwow that Friday, with a lot of our local tribes coming together and celebrating with that powwow.
Yeah, so full day Indigenous Language Institute happens during the conference. Full day Parent Institute, full day Student Leadership Institute for middle and high school students. We try and fit as much as we can in that week to really serve our communities.
It's 3 days, but it's really like the whole week, man.
It's truly fantastic. And if you haven't
Thank
been
you.
before, you need to go. And no matter what year you're listening to this podcast, perhaps just click on the website because we have the conference, or you all have the conference every single
Exactly.
year.
Yes.
Again, in Albuquerque and in Santa Fe, and it flips back and forth
Right.
every other year. So please come see us at La Cosecha, and you will not be disappointed.
And come say hi to us.
Yeah.
We'd love to meet you.
Well,
Absolutely.
man, gracias por todo,
Sí, gracias a
de
ustedes.
corazón, de verdad, and I'm so thankful I got to sit in on this masterclass with you two today.
Gracias.
So
And
we'll have the
appreciate what you do.
information in our description. Listeners, thank you for being with us, and we'll catch you next time. So gracias por todo, que le vaya bien, and we'll
Nos
see you
vemos
soon.
pronto.
All right, adios.
Adios.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for joining us today. Don't forget to like, follow, and subscribe. Adios.